This week on the Nittany Dispatch, we discuss Penn State's matchup with USC in Los Angeles and discuss 2026 quarterback commit Troy Huhn. This week on the Nittany Dispatch. Hello and welcome to the Nittany Dispatch. I am John Somber, Penn State beat writer at the Center Daily Times. She is Audrey Snyder of The Athletic, and I am lamenting the fact that sports exist right now.
I was going to say, John's not in a good place. We are recording this Wednesday night. The Phillies season has ended. I'll repeat
Everything's
that again.
bad
the Phillies
all the time.
Season had ended.
Everything is bad all the time.
And
the only conclusion to draw, and I frankly don't want to talk about it anymore. And as you can, those who are watching on YouTube can tell, clearly doing great because I'm wearing my glasses, which I make a point not to because you can.
Were you crying?
Here? No, you can just see the reflection in my face.
Gotcha.
I cried when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. That is a thing that happened. I'm not afraid to admit that, but no, I was just angry for the last 3 days. But we won't discuss that any further for the sake of my mental health. I mentioned watching on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button down below. Hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us those 5-star reviews and ratings. Those really help us out, and we really appreciate it. But we are at USC week, and one of us is already on the West Coast. Well, we mentioned this post game. I remain in Center County for now. But Audrey, how's the West Coast treating you so far?
Full disclosure, I feel like I've been hit by a bus. I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning. It's 9 Eastern. No, yeah, 9. I don't even know what time it is. Whatever time it is, I've been up for a very long time today. And I'm one of those people who does not sleep on the plane. I had a column to write, and so I knocked that out. Went State College to Dulles to San Diego. Then spent an hour and a half getting a rental car in San Diego. I had so many questions, John. The inefficiencies of rental car companies is the part of road travel I have not missed. But I say all of that. Happy to be here. I've had a full day, as you mentioned in the intro, swung by high schools, and I am kind of working my way from here up toward Los Angeles by Friday.
And let's start there before we get into the USC preview, because I think that is the most forward-facing thing at this point. But you mentioned you were making your way around Southern California today. You stopped in to see 2026 commit Troy Huhn.
Say that again, John. Can you say that last name again?
Listen, I think I'm nailing this. Mm-hmm. I am nailing this. It's Troy Huhn.
Huhn.
Yes, Huhn. But yeah, I mean, listen, I've seen a lot of Troy Huhns, Troy Huns. It's Troy Huhn. That second H is what gives it that little extra to it. But you did stop at his high school today. What did you learn?
I did. Well, I'm not going to spoil all of it because I'll have a story up on the Athletic during the bye week. But, John, for us, I did get us the pronunciation. So when everybody says, wow, Audrey, what have you contributed to the beat this year? I got the 2026 quarterback to say his last name correctly because we don't need one of those Alar things again.
Oh,
right?
That's not where my mind goes. And it goes to Christian Veilleux.
I forgot. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah, I was gonna say you may say that you know how it's pronounced, and you may be correct in how it's pronounced,
but none of us
are with Drew Aller. But there will be 45 different times, I'm sure, where people say it's something else over the next few years until he gets to Penn State, and then once he gets to Penn State too, I'm sure that it will continue to be a topic of discussion.
But no, I very much enjoyed my time with Troy. Penn State, he is expecting that someone, probably Danny O'Brien, also possibly James Franklin and Danny O'Brien, will be out to see him on Friday. They have their homecoming game. And I always love when I go to these high schools and asking well, are they coming Friday? Or are they not? But obviously James Franklin's got a pretty busy itinerary out here Friday because you've got Darius Dixon, who you have to get to. And then you have LeVar Arrington Jr. that you also want to get to. And then you have Troy, who's geographically, he's close to 40 minutes away from San Diego. So you're kind of going down the coast. They're trying to figure out where they could land the helicopter nearby and then just kind of drive over. If James needs any helicopter recommendations, there's some pretty big spaces nearby, but I'm pretty sure they have that covered. But I'll have an in-depth story up on Troy on the Athletic here, probably during the bye week. And one of the things that kind of struck me, or that I took note of, and I'll get into this more in the story, but kind of his path, and I said, hey, you're a Southern California guy. Was there any interest in all with USC? And I'll leave that there as a bit of a cliffhanger, but he will be at the game Saturday. And no, Penn State fans, like, this is not one of those, like, he's coming as a USC guest. No, not at all. He's going as a Penn State fan, and his dad's going with him. You know how dedicated it is, John? He's skipping his high school's homecoming dance to go see Penn State USC at the Coliseum.
Good for him. Listen, there are only going to be so many of these trips, even with the conference changes. This is once every 4 years this will happen, that Penn State will make this trip. So the next time they make the trip, he will be I'm going to do quick.
Junior,
he's
a junior
right?
now. So
he'll be a redshirt sophomore or junior at that point.
But John, here's the thing with quarterback reclassifications. Again, I'm not speculating. I'm just saying in general, who knows? Who knows what year anyone is? But when he said that about homecoming, it took me back because I remember when I was in high school, one of our homecoming dances.
What was that, 1974?
Yes, we listened on the radio to the music.
Yeah.
They had it was Penn State. I don't remember who they were playing, but it was a whiteout game. And again, I didn't grow up a Penn State fan. So I just was like, oh, like, it's a thing, it's happening. And it was a big enough game that they rolled a TV into like the gymnasium so people could watch the whiteout during the homecoming dance. And I was like, this is like kind of weird, but also like I get it because a lot of the teachers at my high school like went to Penn State and a lot of the students would go there. But that just kind of, it took me back, and I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that one time at homecoming where they played the whiteout on, on a TV in a high school gymnasium in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. Yeah, definitely not the 70s, but I was a homecoming queen, John. I don't know if you know that fun fact about
me. I did not know that. I'll have to bring that up from now on. I'm sure you will.
Whenever they say it's a popularity contest, it's like, well, guys, sometimes the nerd and the weirdo can have their moment too.
Yeah, clearly that's a lie about the popularity contest aspect of it. But no, definitely check that story out over at The Athletic when it comes out next week during the bye week. But we will pivot here to USC, and apologies in advance. I'm sure my voice sounds terrible right now. Was a little under the weather earlier this week, starting to feel a little bit better before the trip to Los Angeles, which is nice.
And then the Phillies broke his heart.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that. But yeah, the voice is slowly coming back. But this is a big matchup that probably at this point has more repercussions for Penn State than USC. I think there's more downside, at least, to a potential loss, and I think that is pretty surprising to me. One, I did not expect USC to lose to Minnesota. I did not expect, frankly, USC to lose to Michigan either. I thought they had a strong chance coming into this game undefeated, but now they are a back is against the wall type of team if they want any chance of making the playoffs. So I guess you could say they also have plenty to play for with regard to downside. Yeah, but I do think like Penn State has they've cracked into the top 5 of the AP pool. They're finally making that slow rise up after some upsets to being seen as one of the elite teams in college football. And I think anything other than a win this weekend is going to be a colossal disappointment in that regard. Won't impact their playoff chances, I don't think, all that much. But I do think it will be a massive disappointment on the grand scale of where this program is.
Yeah, and I'm with you because, just last week, both of us were like, yeah, this is probably going to be a top 10 matchup. There's going to be all this national intrigue. And like, there still is a lot of intrigue because it's one of those helmet games too, right? Like your colossal clash of USC, Penn State, 2 super strong brands. But the way USC just totally faded against Minnesota, I guess you could maybe look at it and say, is Penn State potentially playing a dangerous USC team because they're desperate? Like, right? Like maybe they do some things that they wouldn't normally do because like their season's on the line. I don't know. Because to me, Penn State is much better in the trenches on both sides of the ball, like significantly. Like this is an Abdul Carter deny Dennis Sutton have a field day type of game. And I think they will. But yeah, it's just there's the magnitude of this game has been like taken down a notch. But, and I don't want to scare Penn State fans off, but one of the things, I'll have a column up on The Athletic on Thursday. One of the things I went back and looked at is Penn State in the top 5 on the road under James Franklin. You know the stat, John?
I don't believe there are any wins, right?
They're 0-3 Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, again, I'm not here to spread widespread panic, but they are 0-3 on the road when they're ranked in the top 5. And those losses, obviously you have the Iowa loss, the Taquan
Yep.
Roberson loss.
That's the one that sticks out because that was like just everything that can go wrong will go wrong kind of situation for Penn State. And like
And it went
under
wrong.
under normal circumstances, I think they pretty clearly win that game, but they were very abnormal circumstances that day.
For sure. And then you look at the Minnesota loss, which was the Rashad Bateman 200 plus yard receiving game, where again it's like I think Minnesota's ranked 17th at that point. And then of course you have Penn State, Ohio State 2017, your chance to build on it in the horseshoe. Ohio State was ranked 6th at the time, and you just can't get it done. So, while we don't have this heavyweight ranked matchup like we thought, I do still think that this is a chance for Penn State to prove that they can go on the road after a month of home games and that they can beat a USC team that is talented despite their flaws. Like Miller Moss can still have his moments for sure. But again, you got to be able to show that you can do that on the road.
Yeah, and I think that is a good way. What you mentioned, like bringing up those three specific games, a good way to frame this game, right? And what
Mhm.
it means,
Yeah.
because we have these benchmarks of Penn State having this opportunity to vault itself into a different discussion, to be taken more seriously, quite
Mhm.
frankly, to not be on the butt end of the jokes, right? And under James Franklin of they don't come up big and
But
in
who
these
did they
big
beat,
moments.
John?
Right, but, like, listen, that's gonna keep getting brought up,
Yeah.
and the unfortunate thing for Penn State is now if they beat USC, it's gonna be like, "Oh, well, USC has 3 losses." It's like, well, everyone like, this is clearly a top 25 USC team. They're not ranked right now, but, uh, the AP pool has its own set of flaws, I'll say, and there were there was a lot of,
And it
wow,
won't matter once the playoff rankings come out
yeah,
on,
but
or
I'm
is it
saying
actually election night, I think, right? The first one, I believe, is election night.
it
Pretty sure.
is. But there's a lot of discussion about all the top ranked teams that failed, like Michigan losing to Washington, like in this upset. Washington was favored in that game. Like in
Mhm.
every sports book, they were favorites to win that game. Like that was not some colossal upset. Like I think this is we're slowly seeing not the deterioration, but like the value of the AP pool is just, and the coaches pool too, is just like
Yeah.
not there. It's not really telling. It's a good sort of baseline for before the college football playoff rankings come out, but we notice every time, like once those rankings come out, the AP pool kind of shifts to look more like them, right? Like that
Yes.
inevitably, like that becomes like the baseline that voters will compare that to. But yeah, I think there it's kind of a no-win situation for Penn State in regards to like winning this game, and they're still not beating the accusations of them not being good in these games because then USC isn't a good team, and if they lose, obviously it's they fell to another team on the road when they were
They
top five
fell
and they
to an
can't handle it.
unranked team. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, there'll
right.
be that. Yeah.
And I cannot stress this enough. This USC team is good. Like it has a top 10 offense in
Mhm.
the country, a top half of the country ish defense, which is a massive improvement over last year. Now, to get into the game itself a little bit, that defense looks like it may not have Eric Gentry this weekend. In fact, I would anticipate that it does not, based on the reporting that I have read and that has been done by others on the USC beat. That matters, right? Like he was very effective for them at linebacker. He's a massive kid who can get around the edge, who can play in coverage, and for again a defense that is more mediocre than good, losing one of its best players can be really damaging and a very positive sign for Penn State's offense.
Yeah, Danton Lynn, what are you going to cook up this week, right? Like, I think that this is also a big moment for him. I asked James Franklin on Monday about the former Penn State cornerback turned USC defensive coordinator, former UCLA defensive coordinator as well. Um, and Franklin said that, there's the fact that Danton went to Penn State, he's obviously aware of him as somebody that he's tracking, right? He said all the Penn State guys, you want to know where they are, because I do think that Lynn is clearly a rising star in the profession, and you want to see like where's this guy going to go, right? Like what's kind of the path. Um, but at the end of the day, like USC's defense has to figure out a way to try and slow down a Penn State offense that we know has dealt with slow starts, but that we also know is still really explosive. And I think one of the challenges for Penn State is like how do you get off to that fast start, right? I did see the reporting out of practice Wednesday evening that they do expect Anthony Donko to be available this week. So that's good news. Penn State, poised to get their right tackle back after he got hurt last week. Nick Singleton, again, was very close to playing last week. All expectations are that he's going to go this week. So you're back at full strength. But if you're USC, how do you try and slow that down, right? I'm the Penn State come out, make a statement on offense theme, I think is really important in this one because you are on the road and I'm curious what this crowd is going to look like because I think there'll be a lot of Penn State fans there because they always travel well. But yeah, I think you have to try and see can they come out swinging and what does that look like?
Let's take a brief break from the podcast to discuss our good friends over at Rhoback. If you like what I have on right now, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the Rhoback hat, Rhoback performance hoodie that I have on. You can get some of that same gear over at rhoback.com using code TND20 for 20% off your first order. That's TND as in the Nittany Dispatch 20. Personally, I can't recommend it enough. As I said, I'm wearing it right now. I wear it all the time. I will be flying out to Los Angeles on Thursday wearing a Rhoback hoodie, probably wearing Rhoback joggers. It is the most comfortable clothes I own, and I cannot stress enough how much that I deeply, deeply enjoy wearing what Rhoback has to offer.
John, do you own a Heather Performance quarter zip?
I don't.
Because I feel I have never seen you in a quarter zip. I think that might be the only piece of Rhoback apparel you do not own.
That's actually probably true. And I'm just not a quarter zip person. Those who are, though,
Gotcha.
Rhoback is the place to find it, and I rock those performance polos too when I go golfing. But yeah, the quarter zips, not necessarily my style. Those who have seen me will understand that I'm not a quarter zip guy. I'm much more of a jogger and a hoodie kind of guy. But if you would like the quarter zips, if you would like the joggers and the hoodies that Rhoback has to offer, use code TND20 over at rhoback.com for 20% off your first order. Now, back to the show. I don't know. I go back and forth on how I expect this game to play out because I don't know that I have a great grasp of what the offense is through 5 games. I kind of expected to, and I kind of thought I did. And then these last 2 games have been outlier-ish compared to the first 3 games, right? Like they're really grinding clock, trying to play physically. The explosive plays are coming more in the running game than the passing game. Like they're not taking many deep shots per game. They're not really stretching the field in that regard. And it looks different than maybe I thought it would, or maybe different than it did against West Virginia even. And so I am curious to see, okay, you're facing a USC defense that's definitely worse than Illinois was and a little bit worse than UCLA's was, I believe. I think or they're ranked right around the same, 50th, 60th-ish area on defense for both those teams when it comes to SB+. But I do think this is a chance for Penn State to prove it can be more than the, trying to out physical everybody in the trenches and destroy them on the ground. Like they're going to have a chance to create some big plays in the passing game. And I'll be curious to see, like you mentioned, the slow starts. Like, do they take a shot early just to try and back off the safeties a little bit to try and make Lynn and the USC defense consider that? Or are they just going to say, hey, we're going to do what we do and go to the line of scrimmage and 12 personnel and try and destroy USC in the trenches? I think they can do that. I just, I don't know if that is the style of play I would want to utilize against a team that like whose offense we know can really light it up, right? Like, and that's where the complementing, like the offense having to complement the defense, I think that's where this comes into play, because those longer drives, those more sustained physical drives, I want to be able to rely on those in the 3rd and 4th quarter. When you know what I mean, your defense needs a break because USC is going to,
chew
run
that
at
clock.
you like crazy. Yeah. Like you're going to want to run more clock in those situations. And I think the best way to do that is to build a big lead early. And the best way to build a big lead early might be through those explosive deep plays in the passing game.
You know what, John? They don't want to get mossed. Right? Like I think this is.
I left that silence for a reason. I gave
you're
that joke
blown away.
I gave that joke what it deserved.
That's fair. I do wonder, the way I see it playing out is I think, and again, I very well could be proven wrong, I think this could be a Drew Aller statement game. Because again, you're going to have more eyeballs on this nationally. Folks just are maybe a little bit curious about Penn State now that they are ranked 4th. I do think that because of all the craziness of this college football season with all the upsets, I think a lot of people are kind of like, oh, hey, ooh, Penn State, like they keep rising because they didn't have one of those weird, dumb slip ups, right? Like they haven't been that team. So I think that this very much could be like a Drew Aller kind of statement game on a national stage, more eyeballs, that type of thing. But I also, gosh, I go back to when Penn State was out here in the Rose Bowl with Nick Singleton and like that being his breakout moment. And you're just kind of like, this guy looks different. Again, a healthy Nick Singleton, assuming he is back to full health or very close to it, is a dangerous, dangerous weapon. And I do want to see Penn State kind of continue that ground game that they've really gotten rolling this year. Because again, John, you don't believe in this, but I do. You want to head into this idle week with some good momentum, right? You want to see this offense rolling a little bit to kind of get right, get as good as you can, and then say, hey, let's take a break, as in a couple days. Let's reset, and then let's go back on the road to Wisconsin. Do you, a little bit of a different note here, do you buy any of the travel hype, travel concern, not just with Penn State, but like in the Big Ten this year, right? You look at the teams that the stats are out there, the teams that have to go 2 time zones or whatever, the records are not good. Is there anything to that, or do you think it's just weird?
I want to say real quick that I think we are usually saying the same thing when you say momentum and I say confidence. I just think momentum is mostly fake, and that confidence though is important in going into the bye
But
week. The
confidence can
confidence
also be fake.
is very important. Sure, but I think confidence is more impactful in how you operate than any imaginary like we're doing good, we'll keep doing good kind of idea. But no, I think that's very real, right? And I think that's why Penn State's smart to get out to Los Angeles on Thursday. We've seen how many teams struggle when they deal with this cross country travel. It's not something that these guys are used to, right? Like when they travel for bowl games, they're out there for a week in advance. Their body clocks are adjusting. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know Deshaun Foster didn't want to make excuses for UCLA, but that very much looked like a sleepy team at 9 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday when Penn State played them, right? Like I think it is impactful and I think it matters. I just don't know if it matters Saturday because the kickoff time is at 3:30. Like, okay, you can basically stay on your like noon kick schedule if you
Mm-hmm.
want, you know what I mean, or your 3:30 kick schedule, even though it's 12:30 out there, and just you're gonna wake up earlier and just kind of not adjust your body clocks, like just go about as if it's an actual 3:30 kick. That's much tougher when it's a time that you usually don't play games like it was for UCLA. And I think going out a day early allows you to get into that rhythm and get into a sleep schedule that maybe it looks weird because you're like going to bed at like 9 p.m. and waking up at 6 a.m. or whatever, or waking up at 4 a.m. But your body clock can stay the same because you're going to come right back after the game. So you don't have
I
to
mean,
worry about that aspect of it.
John, look at me as an example of
Right.
woke up at 4:15 a.m., finely tuned athlete, sat on a plane, didn't even recline the seat, wrote a column on the plane, drove around all day, and I'm ready to go. I mean, if I can handle it, I think the 18 to 22-year-olds in peak physical condition are fine.
Yeah,
No,
I think like listen, it's very different for you and I. You're going out there for over a week. I'm going out there for just under a week. We will adjust our body clocks based on that.
mhm.
These guys are gone. Like I know they're going a day early, but they're there for what 48 hours, like
So
60-ish hours.
yeah. So the thing that I find, and again, you guys listening to this podcast know I love logistics. It is so quirky and weird and in the weeds, but I love this stuff. And the fact that Penn State is having their equipment driven out, the truck left Sunday night, um, is pretty wild, right? Now, the thought process was that if they were going out of Harrisburg, which they're leaving Thursday out of Harrisburg, and we can have a conversation about that here shortly too.
I don't
Um,
think we have to. I'm
I
tired of
love it,
that
John. I
conversation
love
already.
it. I'm here for it. Uh, so the thought process was you could fly the equipment on this big plane, but I talked to Spider Caldwell, the longtime equipment manager, a couple years ago when USC was joining the Big Ten, and said like, "What did you guys do in 1991 when you went out there?" And they flew the equipment, and he said it was like one of the worst games of his career because a player's equipment bag got left in Harrisburg when they were loading the plane totally by accident. A stack of moving blankets fell over and the kid's bag was under it. And Chip LaBarca didn't have his equipment bag. And like as an equipment manager, like Spider Caldwell was like, this is a mess. So they were able to make it work. But again, like the creature of habit part, that goes all the way down to the equipment staff too, and getting there and how they load the bus and unload the bus. Like there's a method to all of this. So shout out to those folks literally driving across the country and back with all the equipment.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's the back that might be the worst part.
I mean, like that is grueling. Like I mean, I know talking to other equipment folks elsewhere, like oftentimes what they do is they trade off drivers partway through the country. Like they'll have people spread out, literally like in shifts. And then, somebody comes in and once they get there, they all just kind of crash, but then they have to go and set up the locker room at the Coliseum and all that stuff and the team hotel. So there is, again, a lot to this. And you hit on a little bit earlier, John, but to the folks that are just like, well, isn't this just like a bowl game? Like, weren't they just out there for the Rose Bowl? It is much different. Like bowl trips are a week-long thing. This is a quick turnaround. Now, the Harrisburg Airport thing. It's clearly on James
is this
Franklin's
where I can just
mind.
can I just walk away and put my AirPods down and let you handle this?
There is a train coming right by my hotel right now, John. So it's trying to.
I do not believe we can hear it, fortunately.
Yeah, they're trying to get me to stop, but I am going full speed ahead. James Franklin mentioned it on Monday that, this is it's definitely been on his mind for a while because I asked him about it in the summer and at Big Ten Media Days and when were you leaving for USC? And so I knew that they were leaving on Thursday and I reported that back in the summer. And okay, my understanding on all this, because this has been the question that I've gotten asked the most this week, not about the matchup, not about, all this, but why can't they fly out of state college? Okay. The University Park Airport has a runway, obviously, because it's an airport. It's a runway that cannot accommodate like the biggest type of plane that Penn State wants to use. Penn State is electing to use a special kind of aircraft with like the lounge seats and all the nice stuff, right? You can't get that in and out of state college. Now, one of the options, they could have taken multiple planes. That was something that they toyed with that idea last year. That was still on the table even this summer. There was some thought that maybe they would do that. Back in the day, Penn State with Joe Paterno, they would take 3 planes. One for the offense, which Paterno was off and on, one for the defense, and one for the others, as folks describe. They're kind of your special teamers, your other guys, right? So again, like this is not a new issue, but as this conference gets expanded, it becomes somewhat of an issue. Now, for the University Park Airport to try and basically overhaul everything for this is unrealistic, I think, because like we're talking about like this is something that gets used for football once a year to the West Coast, and then obviously your West Coast opponents coming here. That's
and
it.
Who's paying for it?
Well, John, as a resident of that township, I guess I am.
Right. It's the same argument. I'll die on this hill, as our listeners and viewers know. I will die on many hills. But like, it goes along with the sports owners should pay for their own arenas, right? Like taxpayers should not have to pay for their own arenas. Taxpayers should not be paying for an airport expansion that helps the football team once a year in literally nothing else, right? They're not going to add these flights to Los Angeles. They're not like nothing. There are not enough flights out of state college in general, like to justify that. It's just ludicrous. Like I understand that it's something that James wants. It's just not going to happen, right? Like it's not going to happen. And if it does happen, I will be fighting against it because it will impact us. Like it is like as a citizen,
they're coming for my tax dollars.
Yes, like it's a ridiculous thing and I understand. Like I'm sure he wasn't either wasn't aware of all the ramifications of potentially doing something like that, or wasn't trying to.
Well, now if he knows it's my tax dollars, maybe now he's going to push it harder.
But like, I'm sure he wasn't saying that people should pay for it or whatever. Like, I understand he wants it done, but like, it's just not like it. I don't want to have the discussion. I don't like having the discussion because it's just not going to happen.
Well, and so the other point is, a lot of people think that this is exclusive to Penn State. And in some regards it is because the airport is that small. But in others, like, for example, when Indiana goes across the country, they go from Bloomington to Indianapolis to fly out of there. So, like, you're still busing somewhere. The other part of this, because there's been a lot of consternation about how long it takes to get from Harrisburg Airport.
We're doing this.
It's closer to 2 hours. However, the team goes with a police escort. So 90 minutes in a nice coach bus is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Penn State typically does it for the bowl trip. Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think it's feasible. I don't think it's realistic, but I get why you'd be mad about it, or at least
Yeah.
I took it more as, hey, Big Ten Conference, James Franklin is speaking to you and saying, what the heck were you thinking about? Because we've gotten a lot of those not so subtle comments from James with regards to this expansion, right? When he talked last week about there was some like welcome to the Big Ten party type deal in the summer. And he's like, yeah, and they made us fly all the way out there, right? Rather than them coming here. Like, we get it. He's not a fan of the coast to coast thing. We've picked up on that. But yeah, the airport stuff just is not gonna materialize. But
Well, and
I like the airport.
speaking of high flying, I think now's a good time to talk about the USC offense.
Woo!
You alluded to Miller Moss earlier, and I left that joke where it deserved to be, as I said, back when it happened.
My joke just got run over by the train that went right out my window.
Yes, but this is a USC offense led by Miller Moss that has very good weapons. Woody Marks in the running game, transferred in from Mississippi State, was an efficient, effective runner there. Has been an efficient, effective runner at USC. Zachariah Branch is like, I don't know, maybe the most dynamic open field ball carrier in the country at receiver, right? Like in the punting game, they should not be letting him touch the ball. In the kick game, they should not let him touch the ball. Like that needs to be a part of the scouting report for Penn State. He's that dynamic and that much of a weapon. I'm sure Lincoln Riley, who is one of the best offensive minds in the country, will find ways to get Branch in space, and it will be on Penn State to make those tackles. I'm sure he'll try and find a way to get him isolated on Penn State's linebackers, which has been a problem in the past for Penn State. But I think that's where this game kind of swings for me, right? And I wrote about this. You can find it over at centerdaily.com Thursday morning for my preview. But I think this is going to swing on Penn State's linebacker play, right? Like how much players other than Kobe King and Tony Rojas play at linebacker. Presumably Jalen Reed will get be the third linebacker, fifth DB, whatever you want to call it. He will
get
fill
the
both
lion's
roles.
share of
Boo. But then, how much is Dom DeLuca playing? How much is Tyler Elston playing? How much is Dakari Nelson playing? I think, this is it's one of those scenarios where you kind of need to lean on your guys, because I trust Tony Rojas in space. I trust Kobe King in space. I trust Jalen Reed in space. I don't know if I trust the other guys. And if you remember the Ohio State game last year, a couple of the Marvin Harrison Jr. plays, and the ones that should have been plays that weren't, where he was wide open and Common Core didn't see him, were when Dom DeLuca was the man over top of him in the slot. And like Lincoln Riley will find those matchups.
That is a mismatch.
Yes, a little bit. But Lincoln Riley will find and hunt those targets for his best receivers. And I think it's kind of crucial at this point that you don't want to completely rely on Rojas and King and Reed, but I think you kind of have to on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I'm curious when they come out of this game, what the snap distribution looks like, what the percentage is in terms of getting the extra DBs on the field. Because yeah, you and I have talked about it. We've both written about it. The linebacking core gives us some cause for pause, right? When you get beyond those top two guys.
I hate myself for saying that at one point, and now it's become a thing.
Hey, we all like a good bit here at the Nittany Dispatch.
That's true. You know what? That's correct. I should lean into that, because I am a big fan of a good bit.
Own into it. That was like, shout out to the gentleman who stopped me in the parking lot last week at Beaver Stadium and said, Audrey, I hope you don't have to take the scary stairs today. That's the kind of insight and content you cannot get on any other Penn State podcast. We're here for the stadium quirks.
Yes.
Which, by the way, did you catch this today, John? On Wednesday, when I was flying, Penn State.
Talking about the seats in the north end zone.
Yes.
Sorry,
did you catch that?
Are you talking about the seats in the north end zone?
Yes.
Go ahead, give the details.
Oh no, I'm pulling up my message because I don't have it memorized.
Okay. This to me, it looks like there are some tables on the concourse.
So Penn State sent, I guess, a letter out to specific ticket holders, I guess.
I have no idea.
With regards to the North Loge seating at Beaver Stadium. I pulled it up from what I was sent. It says, experience Penn State football like never before with the latest introduction to Beaver Stadium. The new North Loge seating offers a semi-private premium space equipped with a table and comfortable seats. all with excellent lower level views onto the field. Each North Lodge package comes with 4 game tickets, 1 preferred parking space, attendant service for food and beverage orders / delivery, and overhead coverage to protect from weather elements, right? So this is like the overhang area. However, the way it's positioned, the photo, it's 4 chairs and a
Yes.
tiny table.
Yes.
And I'm burying
On the
the lead here.
concourse. On the front of the concourse.
The packages start at $2,400, right? So for $2,400, you get 4 game tickets, preferred parking spot, an attendant service for food and beverage. I don't know if that includes the food or not, or just like the access to the food. And like they're giving you an overhang, so unless it rains sideways, you're protected.
Yeah.
I mean, I am not here to tell people how to spend their money.
No.
Like that is not our thing. Like you can be a fan however you want to be a fan.
Yes.
And if this
By the way,
appeals to
like,
you, go for it.
yeah, I have spent plenty of money on, unfortunately won't be doing it this year, on Phillies postseason tickets, on Eagles postseason tickets, on Sixers, but like I get it. Like I fully understand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not being critical of it. I just think that's what
a lot
it
of
looks
money
like.
for a table.
Yeah, and especially if the food's not included. Like because the food's pretty nearby. Like,
Yeah, and the
it's
thing
not
is,
that
so
far away.
I'm now really curious because they are launching some of these premium packages for as soon as Ohio State and Washington. So like you can, I almost said you can sit in the concourse. You can take advantage of this opportunity with like literally within weeks. But yeah, I tweeted about it. If you check out Odd Snyder 4, there is a link they have on Ticketmaster that this is available. Again, I understand you're trying to generate revenue, but it looks like a very expensive table. Again, it's not my deal. Although I will say, like the end zone view does look really nice from the photo. I will give them that.
I do like an end zone view if you're up high
Yeah.
enough. You know what I mean? Like I've sat there before. I sat there I was actually at it had to be, I think it was my freshman year of college. I went to a Pitt Florida State game in at Pitt, and I was like sat in the end zone, and it was high up enough you could see the whole field. That was when Jameis Winston was the quarterback for Florida State.
Oh, okay.
And it's like it's a great view. You know what I mean? Like I don't hate that at all. I don't hate the view of it. I just, it's some of the other stuff. But
well, I guess here's another question I have now that I am staring at this photo, right? So we're talking opposite the S zone, so opposite the student section. In the photo, it looks like the folks are sitting in front of you, right? Penn State is more of a stand-up kind of crowd these days, right? It's not like the opera crowds of back in the day, which is why they started the whiteout, because they needed something. If the people in front of you are standing, you then are going to have to stand to see.
Which means you have a standing room only seat.
Yeah, but you have a table and you have 4 chairs. That's the part that gets me is like, if the people in front of you are standing, how's that going to work? Like, okay, cool. You're facing the video board and the super ribbon board. It looks like a good angle, but I just don't know how. Yeah, I'm curious again. If you're interested, the information is out there. If not, so be it.
Yeah, I am a little confused. Okay, never mind. I can see it. I was looking at the photo wrong. It looked like that the video board was lower than it actually is, but that's a TV underneath the concourse. It looks like that you can see in the photo. That's not like the end zone video board on the far end. That's what I thought that was at first. But yeah, like I said, I understand that Penn State is trying to generate revenue how it can for the stadium renovations, and I fully expect them to try a bunch of stuff with seating in the future as they go through the renovation project and all of that stuff. And there will be loge seating, you know what I mean, in the new stadium when it's built. And I don't blame them for doing those sorts of things. But I think
hey, here's the other thing. I guess. Oh gosh, I'm gonna say it. I guess you can kind of juice the attendance numbers a little bit more too when you have
that's
this,
true.
right? Because you're basically adding like you alluded to, it's pretty much standing room only, kind of. I mean, you have a seat and a table, but which I wonder, would they? Is there? I mean, not that I've seen. Is there some kind of way that they could incorporate standing room only with this renovation, right? Because I think that's from, again, places that you and I have gone, venues, that is something that a lot of fans really seem to be into. Is kind of the standing room only experience. It's easier to gather with people. I think a little more of a social setting.
No, I've done that before for that specific reason. Like when I'm like
Yeah,
really into the game, like I want the,
yeah.
you know what I mean? I want to see it
You
or
want
whatever.
the
But yeah,
good seat. Yeah.
if you're going to hang out with people, standing room only is great. I'm a big fan of standing room only. And maybe this is just like a modified version of that.
Sitting room only with a table.
Yes.
Yes.
Anyways, back to Miller Moss.
Sorry about
I
that.
do
Yeah. I took us off the rails.
Yes, you did. It's all right. But I do think this is a massive test for the Penn State defense. And there's not a ton more to say, I don't think, outside of what I said about the linebacker play. I do think we're going to see how good the corners are at Penn State. I think that's going to be a positive. You mentioned the pass rushers. Like, I think they're going to have a chance to feast this weekend. And I think it's a chance for the Penn State defense to prove what it is, which leads me then into our predictions for this game. Do you have yours ready?
I do. I scribbled it down on my
Nice.
my Spring Hill Suites notepad. I'm always prepared.
Before you go, do you want me to wait and say the spread and the over under, or do you want to go first?
Oh, you can say it.
Okay, let me find it here because it had been moving a teeny bit. All right, Penn State is a 4.5-point favorite. The money line is -200 for those interested in such things, and the over under is 50.5. And I find that to be the fascinating number in this situation.
Wow. Now you say this, and I do not align with a lot of things, it appears.
Uh-oh.
My pick, Penn State 28, USC 10. That is Penn State 28,
Okay.
USC 10. This defense is really good, and we've talked about it, but I don't know if we've necessarily talked about it enough. Now, the thing that can swing it is I think this is a desperate USC team that might be up to taking more risks than they normally would, just knowing kind of what's at stake for them. But yeah, I've got 28-10, and I know that I think we're not supposed to pick the quarterback as the player we'll be talking about Sunday.
This scenario, I think,
But
it's
I'm going to
okay.
pick the quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
that being
think
Drew Aller, to be clear.
yes. Oh, well, I think that's important information too.
Because I mean, I didn't know if it was Miller Moss or Bo Prabula, like just so we're on
That's
the
true.
record.
That's true. I am going with Penn State 21, USC 17. I think this USC offense is too good to be held to, less than a touchdown or two, right? Like, I think this is an explosive unit. Like, as good as Penn State's defense is, usually elite offense beats elite defense. We've seen that time and time again in college football. It just ends up being the case, right? It's why Bama Georgia was a shootout and not like a 10-7 game. But yeah, I think Penn State ends up getting this done. I think it is a close game, and I think it maybe never feels as close as it is, right? Like, it kind of feels like Penn State's defense is in control. Maybe they give up a big play to Branch, or he runs a punt or a kickback or what have you. But I think this is a chance for Penn State's defense to say, you can look back and some of the comparisons they can make. USC scored 24 points against Michigan, another elite defense. They scored 27 against LSU. They scored 38 against a really good Wisconsin defense. I know people would discount Wisconsin, but that's a really good defense. They scored 17 against Minnesota last week, but that was on the road and some strange circumstances in that game, to say the least, to end it. But yeah, I think this Penn State defense proves how good it is. I think holding USC to 17 is a pretty massive win, considering the fact that they're traveling across the country and, playing on the road in general, and
having to bust 90 minutes to do that.
in which should be a really good environment at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. But I think the player we are talking about on Sunday is cornerback AJ Harris. I think he establishes himself as one of the best corners in the country after this game, someone that gets that sort of recognition. And I think I like to make these little, very specific predictions, because you never know when you're going to nail one. Then you look like a genius. Sheil Kapadia of The Ringer did this when the Eagles played the Patriots in the Super Bowl and said Brandon Graham was going to have a strip sack that ultimately wins the game, and that's what happened. So listen, I'm trying to catch that lightning in a bottle too, but I think AJ Harris catches or gets an interception as USC is trying to take the lead on a drive late in the game, and Penn State wins 21-17 as that pick seals it. But yeah, I think this is going to be a very good game. It's funny you said 28-10, because I did have that score at one point, right? Like, I thought, like, this is within the realm of possibility. If Penn State's physicality is just too much for USC, I could see that happening. I could see USC putting up 35 points in this game, right? Like, if the travel's too much for Penn State and the offense is too good. But I think the thing I feel most confident about, talking about like the spread and everything, is that under. Like, I know I just said that I could see USC putting up 35. I don't think it's that likely, right? Like, I think the more likely outcome, if the over hits, is like a 31-21 game that Penn State wins or something like that. I just think this is a lower scoring game than people anticipate because Penn State's trying to kill the clock at all times. They're using their physicality to win, and I don't think USC is going to be as explosive as they usually are, even if they do connect enough to make it close.
See, John, that's why we're here. When you said that number, what was it, 50? Did you say
50 and a half?
50 and a half. Wow.
I
did not know that. That is jarring to me. I do not see that.
And those numbers are like 51's an important number because it's like 27, 24. You know what I mean? Is in there. Like, we can get into the math of it if you want, but like, that tends to be the case around 49, 50, 51. I was pretty surprised that it was that high. I understand how good the USC offense is and that Penn State's offense is one of the most efficient in the country, and has been all year. But like, for all of its efficiency, Penn State's trying to grind out 9-minute drives, and it's been really successful at it. And I think they'll probably be successful at it again on Saturday.
I want to thank the folks who have reached out with their recommendations for us in Los Angeles and around. We've got some Manhattan Beach recs. We've got some Malibu recs.
Love it.
John's going to try to probably drag me to a Buffalo Wild Wings, but I can say no this time.
Listen,
I have recommendations.
There's no Buffalo Wild Wings for me to get my heart broken in by the Phillies this time, like happened last year. So
that's true. That's the silver lining to this, John. You get to enjoy the heartbreak in the comfort of your own home.
Do I really get to enjoy anything at this point?
As I see my face on your glasses getting reflected.
Yeah. Doing great right now. Everything's lovely. I'm fine. Thanks for asking. I hate baseball so much with every ounce of my being.
I did text John, full disclosure. I texted I believe it was a GIF of Ronald Acuna Jr. and I said, "Hey, just remember this was a down year for the Braves."
I mean, you got to have working ACLs to be a real threat, though. Also, for what it's worth, the Dodgers up 5-0 on the Padres.
Holy smoke! I will say that. So that was
there might
fun.
be a Game 5 in Los Angeles on Friday for us to make a trip to if we want to.
A real sickos fest. We'll just be there being like, "Well, I guess we don't." I could support Freddie Freeman.
No, I'll be rooting for the Padres. Yeah. I love that. Like I've been a big time team Go Dads this whole time. Not going to stop now. Outside of the Phillies, they've been one of my favorite teams to watch this year, and a team that
Profar catch the other night was awesome. Like I totally love how he just owned that moment. Like
I didn't think he caught it. Like I genuinely didn't. So I had the TV muted. Yes. I saw the graphic pop up, and I was like, oh. And then one of my buddies was at my house, and we were watching it. And like I was like squinting at the TV, and I was like, the ball goes into his glove. That's crazy that he didn't catch it. And I was like, wait a minute. He did catch it. And like, I thought that was fantastic. And then Betts hits the home run in the same spot the next night at Petco. And by the way, Betts went yard in the first inning tonight too. So,
and how can you not be romantic about baseball, John? There were a lot of obviously folks
I don't know, you can just hate it.
Folks on my flight this morning into San Diego from Dulles, and there was a lot of Padres chatter, a lot of excitement.
Oh yeah.
Which I think is going to be really fun for us while we're out here to kind of experience a little bit of that. But yeah, October baseball is the best.
No, it's not.
Once your team is eliminated, then you give yourself at least a week, and then you'll appreciate it again, John, because that's kind of the point where I'm at. Like I left my conversation with Troy, and they had the Mets Phillies game on in the coach's office. So I was kind of like glancing over, and then I was listening to it on the radio as I drove like 30 minutes in traffic, because traffic's a thing here, right? Here's me coming from little old State College where I don't need any advanced time to get to my airport, in this big city living over here. But no, it's going to be a fun trip. I'm really looking forward to the weekend, and we will be back post game, sharing whatever thoughts, musings, findings we have from this game, which is going to be a good one.
Whatever Wi-Fi connection we can find.
Yeah,
we presumably get booted out of the USC press box earlier than we would like.
Maybe we'll be at the Coliseum. Maybe they'll be nice and let us stay, and they'll think, these Penn State beat writers, they traveled all the way across the country. We can keep the press box open more than 3 hours after the game. Maybe.
Keep dreaming.
Yeah,
but Audrey is correct. We will be there trying to do that. But we will be talking after the game is over, and we'll have another episode when that rolls around. And I'm very excited. This is one of the first big ones, right? Like we're going to learn a lot about this Penn State team. I said it last week, but it remains true now. Like, this is the first litmus test for this Penn State offense and defense. I'm excited to find out what we find out. But for now, you can find all of my writing over at centerdaily.com, previewing the game. You can find Audrey's writing over at The Athletic. You can find Audrey on Twitter at OddSnyder4 and me at John Sauber. We will be back, as Audrey mentioned, as I mentioned, post-game on Saturday from the hopefully sunny West Coast. I could use a little sun, given how dreary it's been around here lately.
Beautiful today, I will say. It was very nice.
Gonna regret not bringing the golf clubs, but alas. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.